I know that the vast majority of my audience believes that the Florida Maquis and the Patriot Nurse are 100% in lockstep agreement all the time. I can assure you that is not the case. While I do support her channel and her training is absolutely spectacular and I would recommend it to everyone, there are certain topics on which we differ, but intelligent adults that have a sense of decorum can debate things and disagree on things. Recently, a couple days ago, she put up a video very simply titled, "They Are Doing This on Purpose." Now, it's primarily talking about what's happening with the Biden administration, the issue in Ohio. But at about 5 minutes, she makes a statement that the more I listened to it, the more I completely fundamentally disagreed with it. And I made a comment about it. Now, if you would like to see this on YouTube, there's kind of a problem. She's an incredibly popular figure, 67,000 views, 524,000 subscribers, and on this particular video, only after 2 days, 1,847 comments. Now, what does this have to do with anything important? Well, if you went to the Florida Maquis or the, in this particular case, Patriot Nurse Patreon channel, you can see the same video. Now, yes, there's a paywall. Absolutely. She has a $1 level just like I do. 2 days ago, 4:07 p.m. But look at this. 43 likes, only 14 comments. This would be like having a discussion in a living room. So if you would like to get in on a discussion about the Constitution and about different philosophical views over at Patreon, you can really have a conversation where your comment will be seen and matter. Why? Would you like to be one of 1,847 people speaking or one of 14? And that's why I always lead off. Join us over at the Patreon channel. It is only, for sure, at the Florida Maquis channel, $1 per month. Even less if you sign up for an entire year. That gets you everything. Now, Patriot Nurse has different levels that you can support at. I believe the vast majority of her content is available to the lowest levels. There's very, very little of her content that she restricts to the higher levels, the upper echelons. So you can participate and be relevant and see that difference, that conversation. Now, there's no hard feelings, there's no argument, there's no anger. It's just a philosophical view difference about the Constitution. So it's not really that big of a deal. But I always want to mention the fact that she has this Foundations of Medical Prep course, and it is unique on the internet. It truly is. There's nothing else out there like it, where you can get this incredible one-on-one video training from a qualified nurse that takes you through hours and hours and hours of stuff. And you can always go back and you can always look at it and reference it. And if you have, I guess if you have screen recording software, you could probably capture it for download. I'm not exactly sure how to do that. Those of you that know how I do my videos, I sit here with a camera and I aim it at a computer screen. You could always do that as well. That's worked well for me for 6 years. So anyway, I just always want to give this a shout out. It is definitely, I would say it's required truly for anyone that has elderly folks in their life, anyone who has medical needs in their life, anyone who wants to just put another tool in the toolbox. Absolutely get signed up. You can find all the links to the training that she has in every one of her videos. Very easy to find. But once again, over Patreon, huge advantage that I haven't mentioned in the past is that the comments section is much smaller. And you can engage and know that your comment will be seen and probably responded to. If not by the Patriot Nurse herself, definitely other people. So anyway, just wanted to cover that and lead off with that. But there are things going on in the world that they're not telling you about, that they're hiding from you, that are hugely, hugely important. This is one of them. Now, many people have a lot of strong opinions about the southern border, and we need to close our borders and build walls and do this kind of stuff. And it kind of dovetails a little bit with the conversation being had with the Patriot Nurse and I over there at the Patreon channel and on this most recent video of hers. It has to do with the idea of a citizen versus a person. Do men have rights granted by God, or do only certain citizens have rights granted by God? Well, south of our border, things are changing quickly, and not just in Mexico. There might be a time where not only do you not see anybody at our southern border, you might not see anybody wanting to come here legally or otherwise. And that's an interesting thing about how people would prefer, so-called patriots, would prefer anyone coming here go through and get the loving stamp of Washington, D.C. first. What are you talking about, Muggy? Wasn't that what legal immigration is? You have to go to Washington, D.C. and make sure that you're approved by those evil men? And that's not my words. Go watch the Patriot Nurse video. She talks about those who occupy the halls of power in Washington, D.C. as some of the most evil, narcissistic people on the planet. You want them to be the ones deciding who comes into the country and who is bestowed with rights of citizens or not? You want them to be the ones, the final arbiters of this? Now, these four individuals you're looking at on your screen, upper left, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, or AMLO, from Mexico. Upper right, Lula da Silva from Brazil. Lower left, Gustavo Petro from Colombia. And lower right, of course, the infamous Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. You see, they're all on the same sheet of music now. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, we're being taken over by the left. You have more in common as a right-wing patriot, quote unquote, in North America with these men than you do with anyone in Washington, D.C., and I can prove it. Recently, a right-wing think tank labeled the leader of Mexico a tyrant. Tyrant of the decade, actually. You know why? The vast majority of Latin American countries will not send weapons to Ukraine to fight Russia. They're staying out of it. These people are all in unanimity. Free Assange. Free Julian Assange. These people are very nationalist, meaning they have no interest in making their countries part of some global community. People talk about MAGA. You could insert any syllable you want, any letter you want in any country in South America, and that's what they stand for. Make Mexico great again. Make Brazil great again. Make Colombia. Make Venezuela. They're very, very nationalistic. Very pro their country. And they're starting to get on the same sheet of music. You don't think so? Here's your proof. Here's your proof. Timeline. 6 June 2022. That's right. This last June, almost a year ago. U.S. Now here's the key here. Oh, sorry, here, hold on. U.S. Pay attention to the word here. To allow ENI Repsol ship Venezuela oil to Europe in exchange for debt relief or debt forgiveness. To allow. And the Venezuela, you're not going to let us do anything. We'll do whatever we want to do. And the U.S. got all high and mighty about it. Well, guess what happened? Here's oilprice.com, 19 August 2022. 2 months later, Venezuela halts oil shipments to Europe, demands new concessions. You'd be like, well, wait a minute. Doesn't Venezuela want to send the money and get out of debt? Venezuela wants to be paid for their oil, and they'll decide what debts they do and what debts they don't pay. Primarily what they're saying is, look, a lot of these debts were incurred by these illegal sanctions put on us by Washington, D.C., and we're going to decide who and in what order we pay them. So make no mistake, we're the ones with the oil, we're the ones in control. So they shut off the shipments to Europe and said, look, we're gonna redo this. Well, guess what? Europe had to concede. And now here we are. Let's get up here to the date. 25 February 2023. Venezuelan crude departs for Europe. Now, you can only find this at gcaptain.com. See, they've started sending oil back to Europe again, and they have given in. The Europeans gave in and said, okay, all right, we'll actually send you real money, and, it's not going to be just debt forgiveness. You see, here's the key. The shipments were allocated intermittently last year, and so far this year, most Venezuelan crude exports have been halted during a sweeping audit by new PDVSA. That's the state-run oil company in Venezuela, boss Pedro Telechia, who revised contract terms to avoid a series of failed payments by some customers. See, they're deciding now. The Venezuelans are deciding who and when and where the oil goes, because they know they've got the world over a barrel, pardon the pun. Sorry about the flip here, but this is Colombian President Gustavo Petro signing new trade deals with Venezuela. You see, they're getting on the same sheet of music down there. And here's this article that I talked about before. Right. Sorry about that. A right-wing think tank just named AMLO Tyrant of the Year because he won't send arms to Ukraine. Latin America refuses to send Ukraine weapons despite Western pressure. Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, none of them are playing. This is a huge story. This is a huge, huge story about Latin America finally saying, you know what? We don't need North America anymore. We don't need Washington, D.C. anymore. We can work with each other. We control so much of this hemisphere's natural resources, we don't need them. This is a major story. Years and years ago, I called this and said, look, this issue with Venezuela, it's going to backfire, and it's going to backfire in a huge way, and it's going to cause these people to come together against us. Venezuela used to be our ally. Many people don't remember this. Way back when I was in the military, Venezuela was not evil, terrible, horrible socialist dictatorship. They got the F-16 from Ronald Reagan. And they were socialists then, too. Socialism, by their definition, of course, means taking national resources and using that to fund government, not income taxes. Let me say it again. Venezuela and other evil, terrible, horrible socialist countries don't income tax their people to fund the government. They pump oil. In the case of Mexico, they're going to be mining lithium here very soon to do this. And they say it belongs to everyone, not big oil companies. And they bring that money in. And they don't let big oil companies dictate, what their governments do. They have their own. I'm trying to remember where this was, whether Guatemala or El Salvador. I think it was El Salvador. They just opened a huge mega prison. 2,000 gang members. Transferred them all there in one night. You see, this is something that's shifting in this hemisphere. That they're starting to, all these countries are getting together on the concept of, yes, we have our differences. Does Cuba and Mexico get along and everything? No. Does Nicaragua and Peru get along and everything? No. But they do get along on the idea that they're not going to let Washington, D.C. dictate their future. Now, does that sound like something you could get on board with as a quote-unquote right-wing patriot in North America? Well, heck yeah. Most of the South, for sure. Everything from Texas over to the Carolinas, Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri. Absolutely loathes the idea of Washington, D.C. dictating how we should and shouldn't live and what we should and shouldn't believe. That's why they scratch their heads. It's like, why is that the case 99% of the time? But when it comes to the border down here, all of a sudden they want everybody to be Washington, D.C. approved. They want Washington, D.C. to send troops to run to their rescue and build this what? No, absolutely not. This idea of Washington, D.C. being the guarantor of the rights of citizens garbage. Mankind bestowed with rights from God. Isn't that what all the Second Amendment folks say? You have a right from God. If it's a right from God, it's bestowed to men, not citizens. Because you would necessarily have that right at birth, and at birth, I guess, unless you're in the United States where they immediately assign you a 9-digit number, you would have the right before you were a citizen. Wouldn't that necessarily be the case? And think about that concept for 1 minute. I would love to be a fly on that wall. I would love to take a whole group of especially Second Amendment patriots, North American Second Amendment patriots, and jump them into the Wayback Machine and have them sit down and have a conversation over a beer with our founding fathers about this idea of, you see this 9-digit number that I have on this little card in my wallet? You see, that makes me a privileged person. That makes me, I have private laws that protect me. Not these other people over here that speak Spanish, not them, but us that speak English here with this little 9-digit number assigned to us by Washington, D.C. We have the protections of the Constitution. We're the ones who have the rights, and it's their job to protect us, the card-carrying ones, with our Social Security cards. That's what gives us the protections of God. Because that's exactly what you're saying. It is exactly what you're saying. Because that is the only thing that distinguishes you. You see, royalty, and this is going to blow a lot of your minds. Royalty said we have divine right to rule by blood, by birthright. Guess what? You're saying the same thing. No, I'm not. No, well, yes, you are. You're saying by the simple fact that you were born in the New World, in the colonies, that based on that, and the proof of that, meaning you have a little card in your wallet with a 9-digit number on it, called your Social Security card, that gives you automatic citizenship, that you then have more rights than anyone else in the world. That God gave you those rights, but God didn't give Nicaraguans those rights. God didn't give Guatemalans those rights. And look, if Nicaraguans and Guatemalans want those rights, they need to come here the right way and go through Washington, D.C. and get their 9-digit number, and then they'll have the protection. I would love to hear you make this argument to the founding fathers of this country. I would love to be a fly on that wall and watch them literally lose their shit with you and go, what in the world are you talking about? What in the world are you talking about? Washington, D.C., you have rights because you happen to have been born in this particular zip code. And what the hell is a zip code, by the way? They'd ask. Or that zip code, but no other men. That mankind isn't bestowed rights by God. That you have rights now simply because you carry a card in your wallet, because your parents conceived you inside these borders. That's what royalty claimed. That is what royalty claimed. The right, certain privileges granted to them by blood. You're just saying it's zip code. And that you're distinguished from other men because of this. Your rights. Funny story, even back then, there were these things, laws of coverture. As women, ladies, listen up. Not only could you not own property, whatever you had was either your father's or your husband's. You couldn't have money to even go buy property, meaning you could not only not own a gun, you could not even get money to go buy one. And you couldn't sign legal documents either at that time. Meaning if they had licenses for guns, you couldn't even get one of those. Think about that for just a minute. You couldn't sign for a background check. You couldn't You couldn't have, seriously, you couldn't even have written a check to purchase anything, ammunition or whatever you would need to maintain a gun. Nothing. Not at this time. Not in 1791. Look up laws of coverture. And they applied for 100 years after that. Women were property. So, but make no mistake, there are things out there happening in the world far beyond Ohio. And they're big. They're huge. The amount of oil controlled by Venezuela, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia alone could shift the balance of power in the world. Forget Peru, Argentina, Chile. These people, and they're all moving, quote unquote, left. These people get on the same sheet of music. What's happening over Russia, Ukraine, you're going to forget about real fast. Real fast. Because they're going to be the ones in the driver's seat. So I'll leave it there. But once again, ton of respect for the Patriot Nurse. You know, absolutely fantastic content creator. We don't agree on everything. And this would be something that I think would be a wonderful conversation to get out in the open and lay it all out there. So anyway, I'll leave it there. But God bless. Have a great Sunday. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.